A one-woman man's what I wanna be. Stay by her side so faithfully.
Is it possible? Can it be? An opening where I'm not in horrible pain? Well, this video might actually be pretty... Oh, bugger. So we're back to basics. It's been ages, my friends, since I covered a Poketuber on this channel, and I feel as though now's the time to get back to my roots. And you know what? I need some old blood and some new blood. So enter MandJTV and Dobbs, two high-level Poketubers, one whom I've covered already on another video, on another channel, which you can see right here. Dobbs, however, gonna be honest here, I've never even heard of the guy till some of my friends told me about him. So what these two do to enlist me to make this commentary? Well, the two teamed up and came up with a list of 10 things that I don't remember about Pokemon. Well, not me specifically, but with a title that says, "You don't remember," well, that kinda rocks the scale of pretentiousness. Now, normally I would probably just town wave this video away and go on my merry little way, until I put an annotation on the video that read as such. And I quote, "Disclaimer, this video was targeted at casual Pokemon fans than hardcore ones. But if you are a hardcore Pokemon fan, chances are there might be one fact in here that you remembered wrong. Enjoy!" So yeah, now I'm thirsty for some Poketuber blood.
Generation 1. Back when there was no egg hatching for the perfect Pokemon, no Eevee or Ivy training, it was all about using Earthquake and Surf.
Actually, there was Eevee and Ivy training in Generation 1, we just didn't know it, and there wasn't a definite focus on it as there was in today's standards.
Because those moves had 100% accuracy, and were extremely powerful. That's what we all remember. But what if I told you that's actually wrong? What if I told you that moves like Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, or Ice Beam could miss? And you're probably saying right now, well of course Dobbs, they can miss, because there's moves like Sand Attack that can lower your accuracy. Well, that's true and all, but even with accuracy decreasing moves, these unavoidable moves could still miss. And this is how. The infamous 1 in 256 miss glitch. And it is exactly how it sounds. Back in Generation 1, there was a glitch that caused any move with 100% accuracy to miss for no reason, and the odds of it happening was 1 in 256. And think about it, the odds of you realizing this glitch happening on a 100% accuracy move, and remembering it, is pretty slim.
Although we didn't really have the actual accuracy of moves in Generation 1, the accuracy of the moves was only displayed from Gen 3 and on, so technically players wouldn't know from the Gen 1 games that the moves could hit 100% of the time, unless you were using Swift. It's not so much remembering as it is not getting the information. Heck, by the time the accuracy of the moves was given, the glitch was already fixed. Now granted, this is me stretching a bit to make a point, but it's still something to think about.
The original Pokemon anime was definitely one of the best TV shows during our childhood. It has so many unique characters with their own personality, like Meowth from Team Rocket, or even Jigglypuff who likes to sing, but gets mad when you fall asleep. But what if I told you there was something that you remembered wrong about Jigglypuff? Something that even if it was right in front of you, you probably wouldn't notice. Well, believe it or not, it is strongly hinted that Jigglypuff from the anime is actually a shiny.
Shinies weren't introduced until Generation 2. I'm sorry, but seriously, the concept wasn't introduced until then. And even then, if we're going off shiny Pokemon designs, shiny Jigglypuff's eyes aren't teal or aqua. They are noticeably a neon green. And it's not like Pokemon hasn't messed with the coloring of Pokemon in the anime. Pink Butterfree, hell, there's an entire island of pink Pokemon. The Snowman, Snorlax, which oddly enough looked pretty awesome, and the many more that were different colorings. Now, I got this information from the wiki Bulbapedia, link in description, that talks about how there are canon shiny and alternate colored versions of Pokemon in the anime. And on that page, Jigglypuff isn't listed as either. Well,
even though the colors of her skin and eyes are inconsistent throughout the anime, the official picture for her character on Wikipedia shows.
So what? Ever think I'm colorblind?
Those green eyes and light pink skin, which is the same colors as a shiny Jigglypuff.
Yet if you compare regular Jigglypuff to this picture, would you look at that? The non-shiny form looks a hell of a lot more similar to the anime Jigglypuff. Now granted, had you actually used like the sprites from previous generations, then I could see where you're coming from, because they did have a distinct difference from the original Jigglypuff, which was pink. But as I've shown, in the in-game sprites now, it looks more of a lightish pink that's hard to discern. But then again, you even said yourself the inconsistencies, and you're talking about a Wikipedia page. You know, something that can be edited by people who are on a whim. Dobbs, your ability to stretch would make Mr. Fantastic blush. Oh no.
Something that a lot of people remember wrong in Pokemon is the pronunciation of certain Pokemon's names. But what's kind of funny is that one of the most commonly mispronounced Pokemon of all time is either the second or third Pokemon we ever encounter on our journey. This one. As a kid, a lot of you probably pronounce it a Rattata, when in reality, it's actually pronounced Rattata.
I'm sorry. I'm awake. What are you looking at, cameraman? Now, while I have no real definite point, I want to come to the blatant assuming that's in this video. I mean, how the hell do you guys know that how people pronounce that? Especially if this was sort towards the more casual Pokemon viewer, whatever that means. The anime would provide how to pronounce the names of the Pokemon. Now, I am aware that's from the first season, and it's probably the second episode, and it's also from the anime, and I know not everyone watches the anime. But that doesn't negate the point of, how the hell do you know that the majority of people, or even some people, pronounced it like that?
Funny, right? Well, it gets kind of funnier. Even some of the most popular box art legendary Pokemon are pronounced wrong, such as Groudon being called Groundon or Groudon, and Ho-Oh being called Ho-Ho. Because apparently a lot of you think that this fire-flying phoenix is actually Santa Claus. Or doubly promiscuous.
Once again, proof of people actually pronounce their names like that. I don't want to be that guy, but seriously, citation needed. Who the hell is pronouncing these names like this? And what are you basing this off of? Who says Groudon?
Zubat is probably one of the most popular Pokemons for the wrong reason. We've all seen the memes and pictures about how annoying Zubats are, and how much we encounter them. Well, you remember that wrong too. Although Zubat is encountered frequently in the game, statistically speaking, he is not encountered the most.
Alright, is your channel being invaded by Missing No or something? What the hell is going up with your footage and the random bits of static going on here?
The likelihood of running into a Pidgey or a Tentacool is significantly higher than running into a Zubat, because for one, Pidgey appears in most of the region, and for two, Tentacool is basically the only Pokemon you run into while surfing in the water. Poor Zubat, taking all the hate when there are much more annoying Pokemon in the game.
While I won't deny the fact that yes, Pidgey is in a lot more areas, the percentage of confirming the bird is at best 35%. Zubat can appear at most 75% of the time, and that of course depends on the area. Now, while we are looking at percentages, yes, Tentacool is at 100%. Here's something you need to consider though, location. And not just where they are on the map, but also the terrain on which you face these Pokemon. And let's not include such items such as repels for this. All of Pidgey's locations are in grassy areas. You know, the areas that you can avoid in the game should you choose to, meaning it's possible to avoid any encounters with a Pidgey should a player want to. But let's look at the sea and caves, the places where you come across Tentacool and Zubat respectively. Unlike other locations, while traveling these routes, there's no grass to avoid. Wild Pokemon can appear at any time that you take a step wherever you are, so already you come across these Pokemon a lot more than you would Pidgey in the field, or while you're traveling anywhere out. Now, counting the original Red and Blue games, let's look at the areas where you come across Tentacool and Zubat. Tentacool you only come across at 3 routes. Zubat at 4 locations. This becomes a tie if you count Yellow, and if you're not actively seeking a Tentacool with a rod. And I might add, said locations for Zubat are cave, all of which have multiple floors, and will have you spending a lot more time traveling them than you would on regular route, or on the sea routes. 1, don't have any natural obstacles such as boulders to push. 2, don't have multiple floors to them, and 3, by the time you've beaten Blaine, you'll already have the Fly HM and the ability to use it. You can easily just skip one of the routes and head to the 8th gym. This is something that should have been taken into account when making this claim.
Remember back in the day where all the Nursejoyce and Officer Jennies looked exactly the same? Well, you guessed it, you remembered that wrong also. Turns out, all of these infamous twins wore different symbols on their hats so they could tell each other apart. Crazy, right? I can't believe I never noticed this before. All these years of not knowing which Nursejoy or Officer Jenny was which, but now we know.
You do realize you didn't prove that the Nursejoyce were different, right? Now, I say you certainly have proven that the Officer Jennies are different, but is it really that hard to say that Nursejoyce all have different colored medical crosses, or show some pictures of it? Call it nitpick if you want, but seriously, if this was for more of the casual fans of Pokemon, this would come off as you just proving Officer Jenny's differences, and just making the assumption that Nursejoyce was the exact same. Hey, I'm not the one who said this for casual fans. You guys are.
Back in Generation 1, there were many water-type Pokemon with strange type combinations. I mean, you had Gyarados being water-flying, Poliwrath being a water-fighting, and Golduck being a water-psychic. But wait, what if I told you one of those type combinations is wrong?
Size.
If you had the answer, would you know which one to choose?
Oh, here it goes.
Well, believe it or not, Golduck is actually a pure water type, and I bet at least half of you guys remember that wrong.
No. No, 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 no. Just no. This is just another blatant assumption on your part.
Even though in its Pokedex entry it states that Golduck fights with his psychic powers, it still remains as a pure water type.
You know what also appears when you check the data of Golduck? That's a pure water type. Bulbapedia, the Pokedex, the games, looking at the game stats of the duck, the fact that there's never been a psychic type Golduck card. Although, oddly enough, while looking that up, apparently there was an electric Golduck card. Weird. But anyway, I get that the Pokedex says mysterious powers and all that, but the Pokedex also says Magcargo is both as hot as lava and as hot as the sun. Not really the best place to get the facts from, but if you want to play that way, a lot of Psyduck's entries say that it can't recall using their special powers, or it can only use them at situational times. As for Golduck, it's only by Generation 2 that we actually get any semblance of psychic powers coming from it in the Pokedex. And even then, out of the 26 known Pokedex entries at the time of this video's making, 19 of them talk about Golduck as a swimmer and how it's based off the Japanese legend the Kappa.
Finding this out for the first time threw millions of Pokemon fans around the world, and sprung up the infamous question, why isn't Psyduck and Golduck a part psychic type? Well, here might be why. It is theorized since the psychic type was very powerful back in Generation 1, having only one weakness. Game Freak decided to give fewer Pokemon this overpowered type, but it's just a theory. Until this day, we don't know the real reason why these psychedelic ducks aren't part psychic type.
I doubt that since we do have the Slowpoke line and Starmie. I mean, all three Pokemon are water psychic types. I mean, those exist. Remember? But even then, just because a Pokemon can display abilities outside its typing, that doesn't mean it should get that typing for those moves. Hell, you got Gourgeist learning Fire-type moves, should that mean it'd be part Fire-type? But let's go with mostly Gen 1 examples. The Vulpix line in Gen 1 can learn Ghost and Psychic-type moves. The Mankey line can learn Electric moves. Meowth and Persian can learn Water and Electric moves via TM. Butterfree can learn Confusion. Jolteon with Fighting and Bug. The Cubone line can learn Water, Ice, and even Fire moves. And how many psychic moves can the Golduck line learn? At least in Gen 1, one by level up, one via TM, and that's actually known as Rest, and another one if you got it from Pokemon Stadium. And while in the future games, yes, Golduck can get more psychic moves via breeding and a lot more by level up, a lot of other Pokemon can learn moves outside their typing that don't really correspond to the original typing. And I'd argue that making Golduck into a water psychic type would be a terrible idea at this point in the series. Why, you may ask? Because water is such a great defensive type. It's only weak to two types, grass and electric, but if you tack on the psychic typing on there, it gains another 3 weaknesses: Bug, Ghost, and Dark.
One thing that a lot of people misremember from the Pokemon anime and games is Pokemon's sizes.
Not really? The games aren't really telling us how tall a Pokemon is in the Pokedex. Now, granted, there have been times in the games where the sizes are different. There is a Magikarp size mini-quest game thing going on in the second generation, but that's still one Pokemon, and like I said, whenever you catch new Pokemon, it will tell you the size of the mon. Granted, it doesn't do that when you evolve the Pokemon, but...
For example, Charizard. You probably think that Charizard is some big ferocious dragon that can tear down a building in a single swipe. Well, not really. In reality, you're probably around the same height as Charizard, since Charizard stands at a mere 5'7". This is a pretty common misconception since in the anime there are a lot of huge Pokemon.
Except anyone who watched any episode with Charizard knows that Charizard isn't a behemoth. I mean, look at him, he's standing right next to Ash right here. You can pretty much determine how tall he is. And those two Pokemon you just shown, Gengar and Alakazam. Those two specific Pokemon with the weird symbols are ancient god Pokemon. This was back before legendary gods were made, but those are exceptions to the rules, and we have seen Gengar before in the anime, and he was smaller than Ash.
Such as the Dragonite from the Mystery at the Lighthouse episode, or the Tentacruel from the Tentacool and Tentacruel episode. These Pokemon were portrayed as giant Godzilla-like Pokemon, when in reality, they're only around the size of an average human male.
I love how you only pick one instance in the anime where these Pokemon appear to be bigger, when there have been much more times in the anime to show the actual sizes of these mons, like I did with Gengar. Heck, there's Lance, Drake, and Iris, a member of Ash's posse for the entire season, and all of them are trainers with a Dragonite. Now, the first movie portrayed Dragonite at its regular size too. And as for Tentacruel, it was stated in that very episode the reason it got that big was because the super secret stun sauce made the Pokemon evolve hundreds of times its normal size. It specifically said that in the episode. Anyone paying attention would know that wasn't its normal size. Even then, once again, first movie shows Tentacruel at its regular size. and there have been multiple instances where Tentacruel has appeared in the anime. I know you guys said this were more for casual fans, but you're being so nebulous with that it makes it hard to understand what kind of Pokemon fan you're catering to here.
Something that you all probably remember wrong is the generation that some Pokemon are from. Of course, it gets hard keeping track of all the Pokemon when there's 800 of them, but what if I told you there's a Pokemon from the first anime season that you think is from Generation 1, but really isn't? Well, it's Togepi. Togepi is actually a Generation 2 Pokemon, and I bet at least 35% of you guys remembered that wrong. I say 35% because I did a Twitter poll on my Pokemon parody account where nearly 6,000 people voted, and 35% of them thought Togepi is from Generation 1. Heck, even I thought Togepi was from Generation 1 for the longest time. And let me tell you, finding this out for the first time was absolutely mind-blowing. It's a common misconception because Togepi was in the first Pokemon season of the anime, so everyone just assumes that Togepi is part of the original 151, but in reality it's actually a Generation 2 Pokemon.
Alright, let's start with your I bet 35% of you didn't know that chunk. Forget the pretentiousness here, let's consider the fact you think your Twitter followers represent what you think makes up the Pokemon community. Newsflash! The Pokemon fandom isn't just based on your fan base. Then there's the fact that one look at Togepi's information will say this Pokemon was unavailable prior to Generation 2, meaning it's not a Gen 1 Pokemon. Next generations of Pokemon are determined by the games, not the anime. There's a reason why there's a number next to each Pokemon, and why Ho-Oh isn't in this Pokedex until Gen 2. And then, when could you ever find Togepi in the original 151? Like I said, each Pokemon has an index number next to it. It couldn't be part of the 151 rosters, it's already full! And also, haven't you seen the Poke Rap? All 150 Pokemon you can get in the games, minus Mew, are in that damn thing! Chuck this up the poor wording, but seriously?
Pretty crazy.
The Pokemon
Stop looking into my soul!
sounds the same, right? Well, in reality, the singer is actually saying teach Pokemon to understand, not each Pokemon to understand. This is such a common misconception that even official lyric websites get it wrong. But just look at the Bulbapedia article. It says right there, teach Pokemon to understand.
This really isn't a case of remembering it wrong, since in that very same article, the captions on the anime, as well as the lyrics in the booklets that came from the original CDs, said it was each, not teach. Misremembering and being told misinformation are not the same thing. And even then, I love how you completely ignore the quote from the original singers who said that the intended lyric was teach, not each. Notice the word, intended. Meaning it was planned to be teach, but turned out not to be. Granted, the Bulbapedia article could be paraphrasing what he said, but intentions aren't the same as doing. If anyone can find more information about what the quote is, or can find me the actual quote, then maybe I'll take this back. Now my final thoughts. As a fan of Pokemon, I found this video kinda condescending, making blatant assumptions, missing evidence, and generalizing a lot. Now granted, YouTube put in an annotation that says of more casual fans, but what qualifies as a casual fan? Even then, you're both Poketubers, meaning a majority of your audience are fans of Pokemon. Casual fans of the series wouldn't be subscribed to a YouTube channel dedicated to Pokemon, since casual implies they'd have an irregular interest in the series. And what would prompt them to watch channels that are dedicated to Pokemon facts, trivia, and other stuff if they didn't have more than a casual interest into the series? Look, I don't hold anything against either YouTuber here, but there's the pretentiousness going on here. Fans shouldn't be treated like this, regardless of their hardcore or casual. But alas, have a nice day. I'm Skull Common,